What's up YouTube? My name is Luke and welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we will be looking at 5 competitive decks that are budget friendly. Whether you are building a deck for a friend, money is tight this quarter, or you are still bridging the gap between casual and competitive, this video should have a deck for you. Before we get into the decks, I'd like to tell you about PotownStore.com, where you can use code Celio to get 5% off of pretty much any PTCGO code you need, and upon purchase, the codes are emailed out to you instantly. I also have a coupon code for FlipsideGaming.com. You can use code Celio, all caps, for 10% off of any order $10 or more, and they have cards, supplies, sleeves, whatever you need over there. So I've been wanting to start this series for a while now, ever since my friend Cash, who was on the PokeStats team, wrote some blogs including total prices of decks, and he and I talked about a piece of content focused on budget-friendly decks. Unfortunately, I don't think there is a great variety of archetypes to pick from in the Ultra Prism through Hidden Fates format for a player on a budget. With Cosmic Eclipse now released and in the standard format, there are actually several top decks in the meta that I consider budget-friendly to build. And LimitlessTCG.com conveniently just added a price function to all of their lists, so now is as good a time as any to start this series on budget decks for you to build. One thing that I want to make perfectly clear before we get into this list of archetypes is that none of these decks are solely here because of price. They are all both competitively viable and cheap to build. The first archetype we'll be taking a look at is BLACEPHALON-GXNAGANADEI. So BLACEPHALON-GXNAGANADEI has been around for a while, getting some new tools each set or just adapting a couple cards here or there. It is the most expensive deck in this video, coming in at just over $120 US. And the other decks in this video are all under 100. So I did not want to not include BLACEPHALON-GXNAGANADEI just because it's a little over $100. It is still fairly budget, and you might even have some of these cards already to go towards the deck. Since it only uses one Dedenne GX, which is a $30 card, and it's not using any Jirachis, which can be pretty expensive, this deck is fairly cheap to build when you're playing at lowest rarity. None of the trainers are really too expensive. The most you get is $1 per card, so like $4 a playset. And like I said, the BLACEPHALON-GXs have been around for a while now, so they are definitely on the lower end of pricey GX attackers. I do think this deck is very good in the format still. It might not be tier 1 per se, but it did top 8 at LAIC. And I definitely think it's very, very solid. I don't think this deck is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. I expect it to stick around for at least the rest of the Cosmic Eclipse standard meta. Our second deck, which comes in at just under $100, is FLORGES Dollstall. So at $99.52, Jirachis, the playset of 4 Jirachis, are actually exactly half of the cost of this deck. Other than the Jirachis, this deck is fairly inexpensive to build, so if you already have your playset of Jirachis, or you're buying Jirachis for other decks, this is a really, really easy deck to build. It focuses on the Lily's Pokedoll, which does not reward your opponent with a prize card when they knock it out. And then the Florges with Wondrous Gift. You can just set up enough of these to get your Lily's Pokedolls back, and also the Munchlax with Snack Search that allows you to get Lily's Pokedolls back. So this is a stall deck, and the control and stall archetypes of the current standard are just happen to be some of the cheaper decks to build. Usually the stall and control decks are kind of harder to play, but in this list there are a variety of different archetypes, so you can get to learn how to play and how to strategize with a few different kinds of decks if you are looking to build all of these or some of these decks. But the FLORGES Dollstall I don't think is actually very hard to play. You just want to set up your Florges, get a Munchlax on the board, and establish Lily's Pokedoll in the active every turn until your opponent is out of cards and they have just kept knocking out Pokedolls every turn, and you wait for them to deck out and you win by that. It also uses the new Belelba and Bryson Man supporter, which was #1 on my top 10 list of Cosmic Eclipse cards. This card is very, very strong, It allows you to discard the top 3 cards from each player's deck. And if you have a 0-card deck, you're really not getting hurt by it, so you can just Belelba and then use all of your Florges and your Munchlax to replenish something on top of your deck, and you're good to go again. So I do think this deck is fairly viable. I'm not really sure if I could place it in a tier per se, just because of the nature of the deck. It is a stall deck, and I think it's the kind of deck that is less viable when people are prepared for it. So it's more of the kind of deck that I think will come in and out of our meta, but it did top 8 at LAIC, so I definitely think it's competitively viable. The next deck is Psychic Malamar with the Tinas from Lost Thunder. So this deck, you can actually get a huge chunk of it out of the Ultra Necrozma Battle Arena decks, which were put out about I want to say a month or 2 ago. They're fairly inexpensive if you can still find them, and they come with a ton of great cards. So this deck is just under $90 to build. Again, the Jirachis are a large chunk of that price, so if you have them or you're buying them for other decks, you're good there. And then the Trevenant Dusknoir GX is a large portion as well, at almost $10 since it is a promo GX, and then the Shrine of Punishments are about $5 a piece. But Trevenant and Dusknoir GXs are not in every Malamar deck, and neither are Shrine of Punishments, so those are cards you could definitely replace with other cards if you wanted to save $20 there. And this is just a list that performed pretty well at LAIC, but of course you don't have to adhere completely to any of these exact decks. Malamar I definitely place in tier 2. I don't think it has a chance at tier 1 right now, just because of how good Mallow and Lana is as a supporter, and if you're going for the 2-shot combo, or the 2-shot strategy I should say, Mallow and Lana can really hurt you there. I do think the Trevenant and Dusknoir GX is a very, very cool inclusion. To swing 150 and choose 2 random cards out of your opponent's hand and shuffle them back in. So if your opponent took 4 prizes, you can essentially reset Stamp and then Night Watch to put them in a 0-card hand. And then Mallow and Lana might not even be a threat at that point. And also the new BLACEPHALON is worth mentioning from Cosmic Eclipse with the Fireworks Bomb. This deck was not playing Espeon Deoxys Tag Team. This BLACEPHALON actually has a better damage spread when compared to Espeon Deoxys if you're looking at it in the matter of it takes 2 energy to potentially spread 12 damage counters, whereas Espeon Deoxys does 3 energy for 10 damage counters or 6 energy for 20 damage counters. So like I said, I do think this deck is solidly in tier 2. I don't expect it to go anywhere in terms of popularity, and I definitely think a handful will be making day 2 and top cut at standard regionals and league cups until Cosmic Eclipse is gone. Next, we've got Baby Blowns with the Pidgeotto draw engine. This was one of my top picks going into LAIC, and it's actually really, really cheap at only $80 roughly. The Pokemon lines are not expensive at all. Again, it's all thanks to that Jirachi that this deck is even over $50. But Baby Blowns has an insane damage potential with Fireball Circus. For 3 energy, discard any number of fire energy cards from your hand, and you do 50 damage for each card you discard it in this way. And this list on the screen here is by Manuel Joe. He actually bubbled at 9th in LAIC, and he included the Lily's Pokédoll as a way to kind of just stall your opponent out while you set up and try to build up a nice hand where you can go Welder and Fiery Flint and Fire Crystal and just blow up anything you want with Blacephalon's Fireball Circus. And then of course it runs 4 Professor Elm's Lecture to try to get your Pidgeotto set up, and then you just airmail and to try to get all those combo pieces you need, whether it's the Fire Crystal or the Fiery Flint or the Welder. Also, Great Catcher being a card now with Cosmic Eclipse out is very good for this deck because you don't have to take up 4 deck slots for custom catchers. You can just play Great Catchers. And like I said previously when we were talking about Malamar, Malamar is good against this deck, so maybe Baby Blowns is not the best pick for maybe your locals or your league cups if your meta has a lot of Malamar around, but it is very good versus tag team decks, so it kind of evens itself out there. Last but not least is the deck that so many players were calling overwhelming and even borderline unbeatable in this standard format is Pidgeotto Control at just over $70. This deck actually doesn't even include any Jirachis currently. This list is the top 32 list from LAIC, and it actually included some pretty unique cards in it. There's a Rosa, there is a Misty and Lorelei tag team, and there's even a Slow King for that Memory Melt attack, which looks at your opponent's hand and puts a card there you find into the Lost Zone. So definitely some pretty cool cards to play around in this deck, and if you don't have some of the more expensive cards, like maybe the one Rosa or the 3 custom catchers, you could maybe go down to just 2 custom catcher and a great catcher, but then your pricing gets a little iffy there. But there is a tiny bit of wiggle room here. I don't think the Rosa is completely necessary, but it is a nice addition to the deck. And also, it's nice that this deck doesn't include Jirachis at the moment, or at least in this specific list. If you don't already know about Pidgeotto Control, I do have a video on this channel that's all about it, but basically you want to just resource manage your cards with Oranguru, and you draw with Airmail, and you want to get down to a really small deck so you can do the combo of reset stamp your opponent down to 2, Lieutenant Surge, play Mars twice to put them down to a 0 card hand, and then Chip Ice Axe to look at the top 3 cards of their deck and put a card that you don't mind them having on top, essentially giving them a dead draw next turn with a 1 card hand. And you just keep doing that until they deck out, and you can now accelerate the deck out strategy with Belelba and Bryson Man, the insane supporter card from Cosmic Eclipse that just mills 3 from each player's deck. And just like in the doll deck, you usually don't mind milling 3 off your deck, since you can just go down to a 0 card deck and then resource manage 3 cards back in. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is my first installment in the competitive budget decks series. So please let me know if there's anything you'd like to see me do differently, anything I should add, anything that I could take out. Just let me know your feedback on it, and if you enjoyed this, and if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. Hopefully this can get more people to bridge the gap from casual to competitive if they want to, or even get some friends into the game if their friends needed a cheaper deck to maybe start out with. And honestly, like I said, all of these decks are competitively viable. Like, these are decks that people are going to undoubtedly be taking to Daytona Regionals and League Challenges and League Cups and whatnot. Be sure to check out PotownStore.com, my sponsor, and you can use code Celio for 5% off there on PTCGO codes. And also check out FlipsideGaming.com, where I write weekly free articles, and you can use code Celio. And you can use code Celio, all caps, for 10% off of any order $10 or more. Subscribe, like, and leave a comment below if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.